Greetings, humanity! Today is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Let's grok the news. I'm Robert Gardner, using GROK, the most truthful AI in the world, each weekday to help me search out and to summarize the biggest headlines in the news today. You also get the unparalleled benefit of this observer's opinions. We briefly review a roundup of the most critical stories in the world, but first, and mostly in this special report, another deep dive into today's top story, the ongoing conflict in Iran. But first, God with us. The story of Jesus is a full blending of all the Gospels into one continuous narrative. A narrative that misses nothing from the Savior's life. Everything is included from the majestic text of the King James Bible. But God with Us is adapted to modern language and formatted for easy reading. It's a faithful paraphrase, divided into brief stories fit for daily Bible studies. The story of Jesus, from his birth to his ascension. Find God with Us by Robert Gardner, that's me, at Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. And now, let's grok the most important news in the world today. We start with our lead story, Dateline Tehran, Washington, the Persian Gulf. Tensions in the Iran conflict reach a new and perhaps the most critical point today, as President Donald Trump has issued what he called a final ultimatum. Iran must reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 8 o'clock Eastern Time this evening, or face the complete destruction of its infrastructure, including power plants and bridges. That is an ultimatum indeed. U.S. and Iran strikes have continued against Iranian targets, with reports confirming the killing of the senior IRGC intelligence chief and damage to air defenses and other sites. Iran has remained defiant, or at least what remains of its regime has, launching missile responses that triggered alerts in Israel and strikes on a Saudi petrochemical complex, while also exchanging fire in related Gaza clashes, not to mention the oil markets showing choppy volatility amid fears of prolonged disruption to one of the world's most vital energy choke points. It amazes this observer that Europe does not want to take action. It's their oil, after all. Trump has repeatedly emphasized freedom of navigation through the strait, warning in strong language, perhaps too strong, that failure to comply would bring severe consequences. Iranian officials urged civilians, including youth, to form human chains around key facilities, signaling resolve, creating a human shield around various facilities that are key to what remains of the deadly Islamic regime. The deadline comes amid broader fighting that has included a U.S. pilot rescue operation earlier in the conflict and ongoing diplomatic maneuvering. Congressional Democrats have criticized, well, there's a surprise, Congressional Democrats have criticized the approach as escalatory. This observer thinks escalating the threat is the last way to avoid having to escalate the war, and wonders whose side the Democrats are truly on, as usual. Some call Trump's unvarnished, tough talk unhinged. This observer is just sorry he deployed it on Easter Sunday. Others, like Representative Ro Khanna, suggested offering Iran security guarantees involving China and Russia. The situation has raised global concerns over potential wider regional fallout, energy security, and humanitarian impacts. As the clock ticks toward tonight's evening deadline, all eyes remain on whether diplomacy can, at last, avert the devastation that Trump promises. Now we grok the headlines from around the world. Dateline Houston and lunar orbit. NASA's Artemis II astronauts have completed a historic lunar flyby, setting a new record for the farthest that humans have ever traveled from planet Earth. The crew captured stunning images of the moon's far side and of planet Earth itself. They endured a communications blackout as they went around the far side of the moon. Hey, you old rock and rollers, there is no dark side of the moon. There's a near side and a far side, and both of them get light and both of them get dark. The crew also received congratulations from President Trump as they begin their return journey. The mission advances preparations for future lunar landings. This observer hopes to see them actually land in a couple of years. A permanent moon base to begin lunar industry would be a giant leap for mankind indeed. And for you gender Nazis, this observer was just quoting the great Neil Armstrong. Dateline Budapest, Hungary. U.S. President J.D. Vance arrived in Budapest to support Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's re-election bid ahead of the vote this coming Sunday. The visit underscores U.S. backing amid concerns over authoritarian trends and persecution of the so-called far right in Europe. Well, that's anybody who's not an outright socialist. Orbán faces his toughest electoral challenge in years. The globalists are out to get him, folks, including Ukraine, their puppet, cutting off power supplies to Hungary, a NATO member, while the rest of Europe just lets Zelensky do as he pleases in his war for them against Putin and Russia. The current EU and UK leadership are not friends of freedom. Dateline Washington, D.C. The Department of Homeland Security reported self-deportation numbers reaching 72,000 under current Trump administration policies. Separately, ICE conducted operations resulting in approximately 20,000 arrests of illegal aliens in the Washington, D.C. region, highlighting intensified immigration enforcement. And that is just one of the reasons why this observer voted for this president. Dateline, Washington, D.C. USDA Secretary Rollins provided an exclusive inside look at the Trump administration's agriculture successes and strong relationships with farmers. In a related development, Representative Roy introduced legislation combining short-term Homeland Security funding with the Save America Act, stalled in the Senate, passed by the House, and awaiting more congressional action. Dateline, Washington, D.C. Congressional Democrats are reportedly plotting a third impeachment attempt against President Trump amid ongoing policy disputes. Why, if you dispute policy with them, you deserve to be impeached. That's all there is to it. The discussions reflect the deepening partisan divisions in Washington. This observer thinks if the divisions get much deeper, it's time to just declare a cold civil war and perhaps deal with the sedition accordingly. It's one thing to disagree about policy. It's another thing to behave seditiously, if not treacherously. Dateline, Washington, D.C. The Department of Education has rescinded agreements from the Biden administration with schools that imposed what officials called radical transgender agenda items. This move aligns with the current administration's policy priorities. Male and female created he them, And that's good enough for this observer. Dateline Istanbul, Turkey. 3 gunmen were killed and 2 police officers injured in a shootout near the Israeli consulate in Istanbul. Authorities responded quickly to the incident amid heightened regional tensions. Dateline Canberra. Australia's most decorated living soldier, Ben Roberts-Smith, has been charged with alleged war crimes committed during operations in Afghanistan. What a brutal conflict that was. The case has drawn significant attention to accountability for past military actions. This observer sees this action against the Aussie war hero as part of the leftist war for woke communism. The charges are murder of unarmed Afghans. Serious charges. And they are levied more than 13 years after Robert Smith left the military. Dateline Beijing and Taipei. Taiwan's opposition leader traveled to mainland China for an expected meeting with President Xi Jinping, framing the visit as a journey for peace amid ongoing cross-strait tensions. Sounds like treachery to this observer, since there is only one way Communist China will have peace with Taiwan, and that is to take the island back. Dateline Hanoi. Vietnam has elected Communist Party leader To Lam as president, further escalating power in a structure echoing centralized governance model seen in neighboring countries. Just let me know when that works out in the long term. Anywhere. It'll be the first time in history. Dateline Washington, D.C. The U.S. Supreme Court took actions paving the way for potential dismissal of Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress charges. This despite Bannon's actions and rhetoric against the Trump administration policies among the so-called alt-right. In a separate matter, the Justice Department reaffirmed that President Trump can retain his own presidential records just like every president before him. Dateline California. President Trump endorsed ex-UK political aide Steve Hilton for California governor, injecting some momentum into what remains a wide-open race in the liberal state. This observer wonders how the next governor of California could be any worse than the feckless Gavin Newsom. This observer just wishes he still had hair, like Gavin Newsom. This observer wonders if Gavin Newsom has hair, like Gavin Newsom. Dateline New Delhi, India. India's Supreme Court heard challenges to a ruling on women's entry into a temple. Additional domestic stories include 9 policemen sentenced over COVID-era custody deaths and the early departure of Air India's CEO amid mounting losses. Dateline Cambodia. A BBC investigation went inside a Cambodian scam compound involving fake police stations, counterfeit money. Separately, Cambodia unveiled a statue honoring a famous landmine-sniffing rat. This observer thinks much more highly of the rat than of the Cambodian scammers. Dateline, the UK. Kanye West, also known as Ye, offered to meet with the UK Jewish community following controversy over a festival appearance and past anti-Semitism accusations. The festival itself has been canceled because of Kanye West's attendance. Spewing hate for any group has never advanced anyone's career. This man is not the Renaissance genius he thinks he is. He certainly lacks wisdom. He also lacks this observer as a fan. I've never cared much for him, although I was happy to see his supposed surrender to Christ. He needs to start following Jesus. That's my opinion. Dateline Global, for those of you who love food from India, a viral food crossover called Cromun, a hybrid between a croissant and gulab jamun, a popular Indian deep-fried dumpling made from khoya, that's evaporated milk, and cardamom rose syrup, has divided internet users with strong reactions. In other food news from India, experts advised against putting hands inside traditional matka earthen pots for summer drinking water. This observer wonders why GROK thinks this is a top story. But there is an immense number of people in India, the world's largest democracy, and that makes almost anything that happens there news. I thank you for listening. Please join me tomorrow to once again grok the news. I'm Robert Gardner. Godspeed and God bless.